frenzy. Fantasy football style. It's the Goon Hour on a Monday. Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Matt Modica, Greg Sussman filling in for Corey Parson because, Doc, Corey Parson's too busy hanging out with you.
Well, we hung out for a while, and I'm happy to report that Corey is safe, and he'll be back today in New York. So you guys don't worry. He was in good shape when I saw him.
Doc bailed him out.
I wanna hear the stories between Dr. Ray and Corey Parson. That's what I want to hear.
Well, no, it was pretty boring. We watched. Unfortunately, Corey was not very happy because of the Cowboys. Not really, after the first drive of the game, they were not really that happy afterwards. So he was a little depressed, unfortunately. So he had a little slider sandwich, and he had like a hot dog, and I think he had some popcorn and a couple beer. Kind of drowned himself in some good food and some beer. So.
Was he trying to diagnose injuries next to you?
No, but we did talk. I mean, it was one of the guys on the list, Devontae Freeman. We talked about him quite extensively because we knew that this was just a matter of time before he had his third concussion.
Well, that's exactly where I wanted to start because I remember we had you on at the tail end of the summer, right before the season started, and you're like, listen, you need to drop Devontae Freeman down your draft boards because this concussion is his second concussion of his career. It means he's more prone to a third concussion. And I don't know when it's going to happen, week 1 or week 2 or week 3, but at some point, it's going to happen. And here we are in week 10. Devontae Freeman gets concussed. And Thomas Davis, a linebacker in Carolina, says, listen, he was concussed last week. And they put him back out there. And the reason that he may have missed practice time this week wasn't a hip or a leg, because he was concussed and the Falcons hit it. How serious is his third concussion now for Devontae Freeman, Doc, and how long do you expect him to be out?
Yeah, I haven't heard that he's cleared protocol. I still think he's going to be out for the next 2 weeks. That's what a typical concussion takes from an optimal recovery time, but they should actually keep him out longer. Look, when a player has a third concussion in a short time period that he has had, you start to, it's not yet, but you start talking about longevity from a playing career standpoint. But then even after football, you guys, this has been a topic now for a while of what are the long-term effects of multiple concussions in the NFL. And the literature and the results out there are just not pretty. There's memory loss, there's dementia, there's, a host of other things that can happen. So, I love Devontae Freeman. I think he's great player, great athlete, but he has to start to consider now the possibility of his career ending a little sooner than he anticipated. And I hate to say that, but medicine is medicine, and this is very, very serious. So, he was high injury risk, as you guys know, below average because of his propensity to have another concussion. And, he's been dealing with a shoulder injury or a stinger with a minor injury this year as well. And so, he will remain at high injury risk. And I'd be shocked if he plays in the next 2 weeks.
Hey, Doc, let's do a double dip here. Let's go to the Green Bay backfield with Aaron Jones and Ty Montgomery both exiting the games yesterday. What's the early diagnosis on for you?
All right, so Aaron Jones, he's going to get an MRI today. So we're going to figure out exactly what this injury is. Right now, we're predicting it's a grade 2 MCL sprain, but it really depends upon what the MRI shows. If it is a grade 2, that's good for a running back. Our optimal recovery time is 4 weeks. It's not likely the team is going to keep him out that long. If it is a grade 2 MCL sprain, this was a guy that obviously didn't have many injuries in the past, so we didn't have a lot of data on him. It has escalated him into elevated 17% injury risk, but it didn't push him into high injury risk, which is a good sign. So he should heal to a grade 1 and then hopefully to a soft tissue to heal over the next 2 to 3 weeks if it is truly a grade 2 MCL sprain. But if it's less than that, if it's just a minor soft tissue or a grade 1, I do expect him to be back after 1 week. But if it's a grade 2, at least 3 weeks is where he should be.
You know, it's interesting with Ty Montgomery with the recurring rib injury. You have Aaron Jones with the MCL injury. And we've seen some players, Matt, have the MCL injury before. It's only taken him a couple weeks. So I kind of agree with Doc. Like, 4 weeks is probably optimal. He's going to be back before then, if it is what we expect it to be.
Yeah.
And guys, one thing I want to say is that, and you asked me about Ty Montgomery as well.
Yep.
And so, multiple rib fractures in week 4, missed week 5, and he doesn't have to sustain. Now, here's the issue, right? Rib fractures are very, very problematic for running backs because he doesn't have to have another rib fracture. He could get hit in the same spot and have what's called costochondritis, which is inflammation of the cartilage of the ribs, and it's an incredibly painful injury. It's very difficult to control, and so, multiple rib fractures really have an impact on running backs, and that's why he was elevated injury risk, and now he's close to being high. It escalated him to 24%. I mean, he really needs 3 weeks off if they can give it to him.
We'll see, and that is the question with Jamal Williams. If they give him the time off, hopefully, Matt, will get more information before we have to put in our waiver claims, potentially tomorrow night or Wednesday.
Yeah, you definitely don't want a 3-headed monster.
No, that would be the biggest disaster of them all. Dr. Ray, Inside Injuries, hanging out with us here on a Monday. Corey Parsons not here because Dr. Ray partied way too hard with him over the weekend, so he's still down there in Atlanta. God knows if he'll even make it back tomorrow. But the question is, staying in Green Bay with Brett Hundley, there was a rumor that he got hurt. He stayed in the game, but there's a rumor that he got hurt. Is there any truth to that, Doc?
Yeah, it looks like it's a minor hamstring injury. He got injured on the 17-yard run in the second half. Pulled up, and you guys can always see that hamstring injury when they pull up quickly and they're holding their, thigh, back of their thigh. That's a classic hamstring injury. Right now, it looks very mild, and the fact that he's a quarterback, right? He's not a running back and a wide receiver. God, you guys have seen if a running back or a wide receiver has a hamstring injury that's minor, then they really get affected by it. But he's a quarterback, right? So this should be a 1-week recovery. He's still at low injury risk, and But this did move him right now into below average. Unfortunately, he's going to be running a lot. It's just unfortunately that's just the way it's going to be. And so right now his HPF is below average. But I do anticipate if he rests, this week and plays in the next game, it'll move him up to above average and even close to peak health again. So we don't see this as a big concern for him, especially because he's a quarterback and not a wide receiver or running back.
All right, so that's pretty good then.
Yeah, no. And, Doc, let's do another double dip at wide receivers. I know they both played T.Y. Hilton and Des Bryant, but how long before they get to optimal or, let's say, peak health? Is that possible in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, and I had a chance to look at Dez up and close at the game, and 50% of the snaps he wasn't even in. He had 7 targets, and he just had 3 receptions and 39 yards. So you could see the grade 2 ankle sprain. As the game went on, he just started to get slower and slower and slower. They were limiting him in snaps, etc. So again, the question is, are they safe? No. I mean, they're not safe, unfortunately. They're a high injury risk by playing through this type of injury. He didn't get re-injured, or he didn't, as we know, he didn't get, sort of severely impacted by, meaning reoccurred it, but it did impact his play on the field. And that's just as good as if they're not, just as bad as if they're not playing at all. And then T.Y. Hilton, a grade 2 groin injury still requires 4 weeks of recovery time. High risk before this game. He was high risk before the season. He's at 45%. He needs to rest at least 2 to 3 weeks in order for him to get back into full playing shape. I don't see that happening, and so he's going to stay at high injury risk, and you can see his results. 2 receptions, 23 yards.
Doc, I want to ask, as a final question, an overarching question. It doesn't really have to do with a player specifically, but we saw Jacoby Brissett yesterday get hit in the head, stay in the game, and then clearly this dude was concussed. We saw the same thing with Russell Wilson last Thursday, stayed in the game. Now, he says he was fine, but, they didn't do the proper concussion protocol, and we said the same thing with Devontae Freeman just a moment ago, where it looked like he started this game on Sunday, despite being concussed. My question to you is, how does this keep happening?
Well, so we still have, even though all of the rules and regulations that the NFL has put into place, has come a long way from back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. However, there's still a lot of work to be done because at the end of the day, the concussion testing is still an arbitrary type of testing. It's administered by an individual to another individual. And so their impression of what is exactly, to send a player out there is still not, it's not done by a computer, right? It's not like a, strict guideline done by someone that is not unbiased, right? It's being done by inherently biased people, right? You got the player that wants to get back in the game, and you got the team that wants the player to get back into the game. I'm not saying that this is anything shady that's going on. All I'm saying is that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of making sure that players don't slip through the cracks. And maybe it has to do with improving our concussion testing from a protocol standpoint, or administering some sort of computerized, unbiased type of process on the sidelines when a players appear to be concussed.
There you go. Dr. Wright, Inside Injuries. We appreciate the insight as always. Can you send Corey back now, please?
I think he's already landed in New York, so you'll see him very soon.
Perfect.